Welcome to VetSOAP, an educational podcast focused on veterinarians, vet techs, and other animal health members. We're going to help you uncover the people and techniques used by your colleagues to remove the challenges of managing your practice. Why? So you can spend more time on the things that you enjoy and ultimately earn the money that you deserve. This podcast is a production of Viticus Group, and it's recorded here in the sunny city of Las Vegas. Our website is viticuspodcast.com, and an audio and video version of this episode is available on all of your favorite podcast and video distribution platforms. I'd like to thank Crystal and Dr. Pease for letting me be here today and stand in for them while they're out of town. And if you haven't met me here at Viticus, my name is Dr. Jamie Perkins, and I'm the Director of Program and Conference Education. I have with me today Dr. Clint Neill from the AVMA. He's a senior economist, and he's going to be talking to us today about burnout. So I'd like to give Dr. Neal an opportunity to introduce himself a little bit more if he has anything else to share about his title and his position at the AVMA.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie. So my job at AVMA is actually as the Associate Director for Strategic Business Research and Outreach. And so a lot of what I'm doing is going out and talking about all of the really important topics that we've been doing as part of the Economics Group of AVMA, and trying to really translate that to something that businesses can use and take back home and try to be more profitable and run a better business and all of those types of things. So we're doing a lot of cool things, and I also have a part-time appointment still with the Cornell Vet School as part of their Center for Veterinary Business and Entrepreneurship. And I was their lead researcher there, and I'm helping them transition to somebody new as I took on some new adventures.
So I have to ask, as an economist, how'd you wind up in vet med?
I get that question a lot because I kind of fell into veterinary medicine, oddly enough, even though I grew up around animals my whole life. But when I was doing my PhD in agricultural economics at Oklahoma State, I was approached by AVMA at the time, their former economics director, was looking for somebody to do some research related to economics and veterinary medicine. And I said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. I don't have to collect my own data, and I could do something that could be really impactful for businesses. And then ever since then, for about almost 10 years now, I've been working with AVMA and really the entire industry for veterinary medicine.
I have to admit, it's a good industry.
I mean, it is. We get to work with animals all day, right?
Puppies and kittens all day long, right?
Exactly. So it's been great, and I was happy to take on this new adventure with AVMA and really try to make an impact. That's really what I was looking for.
Well, we're excited that you're here, and really grateful that you came out today for the Veterinary Practice Management Symposium that we had and had a speech. It was great.
Yeah, well, everybody wants to hear about what's going on with the macroeconomy and all of those things. And so happy to give an update and talk about all the great things AVMA is doing.
Important topics. You're doing really great work. It's great that you're getting things out there, publishing things, really sharing some stuff with the industry. I don't want to spend too much of your time today, though, just kind of talking about some of the things that we've gone through. So I'm going to kind of jump us into the topic that we're here for, about burnout. I get this question a lot, at least I did as a faculty member from students, kind of the difference between burnout, compassion fatigue, and what some of the differences are in the terminology. Is that something that you could expand on for our audience?
Absolutely. So starting with burnout, I want to take a step back and really talk about what is that definition. So burnout is really a psychological distress from work, and it is chronic. So we're not talking about acute issues. We had a bad day at work. This is something that we've had a lot of stuff going on at work. It's really stressing us out, and we're just kind of not motivated anymore. And so this is classified as essentially an illness, and so it's something we really have to think about. When we talk about compassion fatigue, that's almost like a symptom of I guess wouldn't say symptom. What I would say is kind of one of the causes of burnout in veterinary medicine, and we see the same thing happen in human health as well, where compassion fatigue, because we're dealing with animals, we have to deal with euthanasia and those types of things, and vets, they're very passionate about working with animals, right? And so they feel that stress as well when they have a stressful time or they see an animal in distress. And so that compassion fatigue takes over and can really be a downer at work, right? And so burnout is kind of what happens after that as well. But it's also about just being in a toxic workplace and all those types of things. So compassion fatigue is not quite burnout, but it is related.
Are there other things outside of compassion fatigue that are really leading to burnout that you guys are finding in the literature?
Oh yeah, I mean, just the ability not to have a work-life balance, the just constantly thinking you have to be at work and that there's animals that are in need, all of those types of things really play a role into kind of that mentality of becoming burnt out. And so it's really about that work culture along with just the nature of the work. Some other things are secondary traumatic stress, which we also can measure, which is more so kind of that indirect piece of working in the industry. You have colleagues that are maybe had to perform a euthanasia today, and you know they're depressed about that. And so we see those kind of things also kind of doubling up and kind of really reverberating through even just within a clinic or within a practice.
No, I agree. And you know, veterinary medicine is interesting, right? Because most of the people in the industry are in a leadership position in some capacity, whether they realize it or not, right? You're leading other technicians as a veterinarian, you have a staff that you're working with, or you're working with students. And it's one of those things that I see a lot of people, they take on the problems of other people that are in their team because they're in these roles. Do you have any advice for people who find themselves in one of those positions? Because a lot of times I think it's people who don't even recognize that they're in that leadership role and that they're doing it, right? Someone else is burned out, you're picking up the slack, you're doing some of the work, and you're just creating this vicious cycle. Are you guys finding that there's anything that people can do in some of those roles?
Yeah, and it's really about just being conscious of the fact that we're all humans, we're all in a very collective, work environment. We have a team, no matter whether you're a veterinary technician, a vet assistant, even if you're just the receptionist, you're all part of a team. And it's really important to remember that teamwork aspect of this, as well as thinking about the communication and not just shutting yourself down and having the appropriate times and people to talk to. And a lot of that can sometimes come from, talking to a therapist and those types of things, but it's just really about being open about the situations and also creating a work environment that's not, detrimental to all of that as well. Just being in a very inclusive and open environment that's going to allow for that to happen. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've had some workplaces prior to my job now that were just people being negative all the time, right? And it's like, oh, well, my manager sucks. Well, okay, fine, but what can we do about that? How do we open that communication and really tackle that problem differently? And it's really about the teamwork aspect of that.
Definitely been in some different places. I mean, this organization is great, right? And my boss is amazing. And he's constantly telling me, go home, go to sleep, take some time, do some things. And it's a nice change having someone do that. But I know that there are people who are out there who aren't that fortunate and they're not in that position, they're not in that role yet, or they have different responsibilities and it's kind of building on things. But agreed, it's part of it. Find the right place, the right work culture.
Absolutely, and I'm very happy with where I am now. Both of us being from academic backgrounds, it was publish or perish and get that grant, do those types of things. And while I had really supportive mentors and colleagues about that, it was just always that overarching feeling like somebody's going to judge me for not doing enough. And, with AVMA now, I'm very happy. Everybody's like, you need to take a vacation. You've only been here for 3 months. It's time to go away for a minute.
It's so funny that you say that because, yes, being from an academic background, it was interesting. And I had great mentors too, and I worked for really good people. But it's like this looming thing that just exists in the back of your mind. Yeah. I should be writing a paper right now. It doesn't matter that I'm on the beach.
Well, and I think that Med is very similar in that, right? It's like there's always another patient to help, right? There's always another client that's going to be there. And just to think about how do we create a space for that in time that we're not always thinking about that, right? When you go home, you shouldn't be filling out patient reports, right? And following up on all those types of things. Should really just be taking the time to be like, I'm home, I'm with my family or my own pets, and taking that as a time to just decompress and take a step away from work. And having a work culture and an environment that will help with that is super important and something that for those in leadership and management positions really need to focus on having that as a part of their kind of way to be a leader.
So what's AVMA doing about that? How are you guys sharing the information? How are you teaching people some of these things? I know that we're in different roles right now, but neither one of us are in clinical practice, and it's a whole different piece of the industry. So what are we doing for those individuals?
Yeah, so AVMA has really taken two kind of steps to doing that. First was really defining that problem from an economic perspective, because I am an economist. And what we really wanted to do was give people a way to talk about that. And so we had a first set of studies while I was actually at Cornell, before I joined AVMA as a lead researcher, doing this work about calculating the economic costs. So what does it actually cost your business when you have people that are working for you that are burnt out? And what we really see is, people tend to leave, right? We have turnover problems, both on the veterinarian and veterinary technician side. They want to reduce their working hours, or maybe they're going from full-time to part-time, doing relief work. All of those types of things really take a toll on, the cost that it is to run your business. So when you have people who leave, you have to replace them. That requires posting jobs, hiring them, startup packages. I have to train them for how we do things in our clinic. And then are they going to be able to produce at the rate that your former employee was producing at? And so those types of things all add up, right? You're losing revenue when that happens. Same thing when you're reducing the number of work hours. I'm not working as much. So I either have to hire another person or just say that's lost revenue. And so those things add up as cost. And what we see is that when you have burnt out employees, it's really costing your business about $25,000 a year on average. And obviously that's if all of your employees are not burnt out, you're not going to experience that. But when you have a lot of turnover, you have a lot of people trying to reduce their working hours, those two things are going to play a really big role in that. The second set of work that we're going to do, that we've in partnership with Zoetis, is actually funding work to find those solutions and thinking about that from an organizational perspective rather than the individual. The vet needs to do something or the vet tech needs to do something. It's really about what can an organization do to help with that.
And is that work that's going to apply to some of the smaller practices that may be single doctor organizations, and is going to translate that way?
So with single doctor organizations, they're a whole nother thing, right? Like I've got one vet and maybe a few vet techs working with me and that kind of thing. So it's not quite for that. We truly believe that the work we're doing, the research itself is not focusing on that, is how I should say that. We do think all of the actual things we'll learn will apply across the board. But the study that we're doing with Zoetis and in partnership with Cornell and some organizational behavior scientists there is to actually look at these organizational interventions, and particularly those that have 2 to 4 doctor practice, just because it's a little bit easier to work with them when you're doing clinical trial type work. And in this setting, when you're trying to build an intervention and then you have to evaluate that 6 months later with these, with all of the employees and everything. So that's where that study is focusing. But like I said, it's all about teamwork. It's all about communication. Don't think that's a bad thing for anybody or any type of practice, no matter the size. But that's kind of what the study itself will focus on, and then we'll come up with a list of recommendations from there.
Communication is definitely key. It's one of those words, I mean, we feel like we hear it all the time, and then when you see it not working, So where do people find this information? You're doing all of this great work. You're working with these large organizations. AVMA is a large organization. How do people find this stuff?
So right now we've published the first study, which is all the economic cost stuff, and you can find that pretty easily. It is called The Economic Cost of Burnout. And if you search my name, you'll find it pretty easily. Google Scholar, I think if you just Google it, it'll probably show up. On the next set of studies, not a lot of that's public. We are talking about it at our AVMA Business and Economic Forum, and we'll have some further communication about that as well. A lot of that is there's a lot of information that AVMA has to offer on their website for things like teamwork and Journey for Teams, which is a big one for us, as well as just kind of what we've been doing, where we're going. Once we wrap up the second phase of the study about solutions, we're actually going to release a lot of things. One about how to calculate that cost of burnout for your own clinic and practice, as well as what can we recommend and what type of things do work for when we're trying to really focus on teamwork and communication, and what are the strategies and tools that we can do to do that. If you do want to figure out for your own practice if burnout is an issue and measure compassion fatigue and those types of things, The tool we actually use to measure that from AVMA's side, there's a couple different tools. But the one we use is called the Professional Quality of Life Scale. It's publicly available. You can look at that yourself and say, hey, I'm going to have everybody in my practice take this, little quiz, and then we'll calculate our scores and see where we're at. And I think, honestly, that might be a great starting point for a lot of people, just to be like, do I have a bunch of people who are burned out? And then opening that conversation about, can we actually start changing this?
Well, I'm excited to hear more. I know that you guys have a couple of talks that you're also going to be doing at Western Veterinary Conference in 2023. So I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about some of these things there too.
Oh, absolutely. We're always doing something at AVMA, especially in the economics division, that is really trying to solve these problems, and we're excited about it.
Well, I appreciate your time today. I don't want to keep you for too much longer. I know that there's a couple other things going on today, but I do want to give you one more opportunity just to make sure that everybody has the website. Is it just avma.org or are you guys.com?
We're definitely org, so avma.org. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly as well. My email is cneil, CNEILL, @avma.org. And that's, again, 2 L's in my last name, so that is a tricky one sometimes. But feel free to reach out. I'm pretty good at responding to email when I'm not on the road traveling and talking all the time.
I thought you did a pretty good job considering you're on the road and still answering most of my emails.
Well, it helps when the plane has Wi-Fi.
Well, I appreciate your time very much today. And so, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for an episode, please email us at vetsoap@viticuspodcast.com. That's vetsoap@viticuspodcast.com. And if you like what we're doing on the podcast, please leave a positive review on your favorite platform. Thank you so much for watching.